Hello, everyone, and welcome back to FinCrime Insiders. This is episode 2. I'm your host, Skylar Palmer, and I'm here with my partner, Lauren Schaefer, and our special guest, Russell Dombrowski. Today, we're going to be talking about all things financial crimes compliance. We'll be asking Russell 5 questions about himself and his experiences in the industry, and we're excited to hear his insights.
Hi, Skylar. Hi, Russell.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Thank you. Before we get this started here, I want to remind everyone watching or listening that the views and opinions expressed on FinCrime Insiders are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of their past, current, or future employers. Any content provided by our webcast hosts or participants are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything. Alrighty. Now, without further ado, let's get this episode started. All right. Russell, thank you again for coming on the show here. I know it's sort of last minute, but you kind of saved our butts because our previous participant had some issues come up. So we super appreciative of you coming down here or sitting on the screen and talking to us about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here to help any way I can, especially for anyone looking to get into our job field.
All right, awesome. Well, go ahead, Lauren. You can go ahead and get us started here with the first question.
Okay, so Russell, what is your job title?
So right now I'm currently a senior analyst in a quality control position. So right now I'm essentially checking other analysts' work, and right now I do a lot of training for new incoming analysts or struggling analysts that I work with.
Okay, and what type of institution are you at?
So I'm currently a contractor, and I work for a P2P transfer service. Pretty big company. I'm sure everyone that's gonna be watching this has used that platform before, but they focus mostly on P2P transfers.
Okay, and can you describe the structure of your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have like a director, and then we have essentially a managerial team. And then from there on, we have the QCs that oversee. We're kind of like the sergeants of the group. We make sure that everyone's performing their analyst duties and that all their work is correct, and we check it. And then at the very bottom, you have the analysts, which are essentially the heart and soul of the compliance team. They're the ones that are like in the trenches, actually looking at these alerts and writing the SAR reports and deeming things suspicious or not suspicious.
Great. And then, what does your scope of responsibilities look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, currently, obviously in charge of training new and struggling analysts. I do spot check reports. So I take a percentage of the analysts that are assigned to me, their work, and I double check it, make sure everything's in regulation per all of the financial regulations. I make sure that there's no errors in either reports. And then I assist the team with future training and workshops for emerging typologies.
Awesome. So you say P2P transfer service. So this is it's a money service business, and you work at a contracting firm, and so your money service business that you're assigned to, this has been your only client since you worked at this contracting firm?
Yeah, so I've been strictly on this client since I got hired. Um, I've been very lucky. It's probably one of the best clients that you can be on. And it's great working in the fintech world. You know, you get to use a lot of technology in your job, and things change really quickly, and new stuff happens like every day, honestly, because it can
Yeah.
roll out so fast with the more flexible structure of like a fintech versus like a traditional bank.
Yeah, so there's not really you're not answering to a federal overlord per se. It's not like you're answering to uh, you know, the SEC, OCC, FRB, or things like that. I guess some of the products, though, with that money service business maybe have to be registered with SEC. I don't know. You know?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure all of that stuff has to be registered.
Yeah.
We just don't really get to deal with that at our level. It's more of like the compliance officer.
Yep. Yep. Makes sense. All right. Right on. We'll go ahead and move on here to question number 2 then. We have what are some of the trends maybe you, your team, or your institution has been noticing? This could be something that you guys talk about, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, annual meetings, or this is just maybe something you have personally seen throughout your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. For me personally, the biggest trend that I've seen going over all these reports and looking at what other people are saying is the account takeover and identity theft. That absolutely is right now the biggest one. I could expand further on that. I just wanted to say one more too. I also have been noticing a lot of essentially like Bitcoin MSB activity. So people purchasing Bitcoin on behalf of others to try to obscure like the source of funds. And also the second typology within that is people scamming people saying that they're going to buy Bitcoin under their name and they don't. So those kind of go hand in hand. And sometimes I see all of those in the same account, honestly. They'll be scamming and laundering funds and using someone else's stolen ID. I mean, it can be a treasure trove sometimes when you open them up. But those are definitely the typology I've seen. The identity theft and ATO seems to be the most serious. Very large cases with very high amounts. It's honestly really alarming.
And with the ATOs, account takeovers, for those listening that aren't familiar with the space, some of these acronyms that we'll say, they'll be available too in the description of the video. So if you're completely novice to this industry, don't be overwhelmed by the use of the acronyms. But so these account takeovers, now, okay, so I guess identity theft / account takeovers. Can we break it up though? So account takeovers, we're talking about these are real live users, and for one reason or another, they clicked a bad link or they were talking to somebody, texting, and then became friends with somebody,
Yeah.
and were coerced one way or another to give up their account activity. But as far as the identity theft goes, is that specific towards that account takeover, like they're posing as them, or are you talking about fictitious accounts being opened up using stolen identities?
Yeah. So for some reason we kind of lump them together for like training purposes where I work, but they are like two separate typologies with different red flags. I would definitely say that the identity theft is pretty rampant. And like we discussed earlier, when we first started communicating, I believe that this has to do with a lot of the data breaches through the credit card companies and the government and all kinds of stuff like that, that I think people have gotten these, essentially people's PII, their personally identifying information or credit cards. I heard something about like the DMV got hacked like a year or two ago. So all of people's addresses and IDs and pictures are out there. And we can't really confirm yet because it's still kind of like new that we're looking into, but I do think that a lot of that's coming from these data breaches and being sold, whether it's on the gray market or the black market or through the dark web. And most of these cases I've seen are very large, like rings of people working together in foreign countries. And they're working in a very well organized, skilled kind of ring, honestly, like a cartel almost. And
Yeah,
it's really alarming.
I mean, that's a big topic right now in the industry overall, is the forced labor. That's going on. Cambodia, I feel like, is one that
Yeah.
consistently comes back up. There's like a little province there that's right on the border of Cambodia and the surrounding country there, and it's just forced labor. And basically it's 3 stories full of little mini cubes, basically like in the whole office space, where their sole purpose is just to initiate contact with potential victims of these fraud schemes and
Yeah.
scams, and build relationships, and it's like clockwork, and they'll take a very slow approach if they have to. Some of these things take
Yeah.
6 months to a year to form that type of relationship with the unsuspecting victims.
Yeah.
Pig butchering, right, comes up pretty often now, which encompasses a whole lot of those different types of typologies.
Yeah, and then for the kind of the fraud and scam typology, like I actually saw one the other day. I was driving, and it was just a sign on the side of the road that showed like Labrador puppies for sale. And that's like indicative of your typical puppy scam. And I just was curious, so I called them, and it goes straight to voicemail. And then I got a text message saying, "Hey, we have 6 out of the 12 puppies left. We just need a deposit through various app on your phone, and we'll go ahead and reserve a puppy for you." And I'm like, well, there's a puppy scam right there. Just
Yeah, not
where I
a
live.
yeah, not to name names or anything, but it's
I've
probably
never heard of that scam.
Oh
it's
yeah.
probably a WhatsApp or something like that. Telegram. They're like, hey, come on here, follow my channel. It's where I sell my dogs.
Yeah, it was very sketchy, and you can tell honestly that the picture that they used on the side of the road was just a generic picture they got off the internet. And these scams are everywhere, and I feel like more people fall for them than really should. And I think we need to educate ourselves within our industry to be hyper vigilant of this. But also, I tell all my friends about like those types of scams, so that they don't fall victim to them. Anytime I see something like that, that seems like a lot of people would fall for.
Yes, most definitely. And to us from the space, or even to people that are just skeptical of things in general, I feel like they're always like, I would never fall for that, or things like that,
Yeah.
right? But I I've had a friend or a colleague before, get so involved with like a new hire process of a prospective company, and like
Yeah.
all the red flags were there, but they were just like, oh, this is my dream job, and this is what I want to
Yeah.
pursue. And unfortunately they didn't talk to anybody until almost towards the end or whatever, and by that time, like, luckily they didn't give in to their third party authenticator app to get signed in. But I mean, they already disclosed, the picture of their driver's license, they got an email address, obviously name, home address, things like that. So a lot of that PII has already been scalped, right? And it's probably sold on the dark web currently. But I mean, fortunately, they didn't lose access to one of their third party authenticators, which would have been big trouble because it's used, pretty universally across a lot of the major websites, including government websites.
Yeah, well, like, to be completely honest, when I hear about a lot of these scams, the first person I think about are my parents, because my mom clicks on anything that comes into her email. So I'm trying to educate her about, this is phishing, this is spear phishing. We don't do that. We don't click these links. I really want my parents to, at the very least, understand the basics of some of these ways that people are exploiting other people, so that I don't have to get a phone call saying that my parents got scammed. Because my
Yeah.
mom actually, she did get scammed recently. She's a small business owner, and she ordered some products, and it turned out that the company that she orders the products from is in India. Now the company itself is legit, they sell real stuff and it's a real company, but it turns out that the people that were working within the company, they lifted her credit card number and started charging it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Lauren, any last comments or remarks?
Oh yeah, I had a comment and then it just said, oh, I was gonna ask about the typologies for that. Are you guys just notified like based off of red flags that the account may have been taken over, or that it looks like identity theft, or people reporting it to you?
So
Like, is
yeah.
it blatantly obvious that it's account takeover and whatnot?
Um, when we first started identifying it, it was pretty obvious. So let's say we found accounts that weren't being reported. So for account takeover, obviously, well, no, I wouldn't say obviously. I'd say it's 50-50 if people notice their accounts are taking over, because a lot of people don't use P2P apps as much as other people do. But what I will say is that with identity theft, people normally don't know that's happened to them at all, because there's no notification at all that accounts have been open in their name or anything like that. So those we detect essentially internally. And I'd say when we first started seeing those, they were not, they were super obvious, and the methods have gotten more sophisticated, and the detection's been a little bit more difficult. But I think that as the analysts on our team are getting more used to working with these cases, they're getting really good at identifying them, because there's certain red flags that you just can't avoid.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, real quick, I'm familiar because Russell and I had worked on this for this client previously together. So going through the process, Lauren, it's like they have an alert triage team, they have a case investigator, and then they have a SAR investigation team and a 90-day SAR investigation team. So it's very structured, and alert triage is pretty typical. I didn't work it, but Russell did, and I think from what he explained to me is that it's basically just based off of traditional red flags. You kind of just get it at your queue, right? Escalated up.
Yeah, they go off of a velocity of payments and amounts within time periods.
Yeah, and then
Oh, okay.
so the case investigator then gets that, knowing that it was escalated for this typology, and then they do a little bit more due diligence, and then they confirm, or sometimes they'll even say, well, it's not that typology, it's actually this. And then it gets to the SAR investigator, and then the SAR investigator takes all that came up with that, with the escalation details, but they still do their own due diligence. And hopefully the previous investigators are leading them on the correct path so they don't waste a lot of time, right, going elsewhere, and they can quickly look into it and confirm, oh yeah, it's account takeover. But maybe the SAR investigator figures out that there is like money laundering going on, which is highly likely. If this account was taken over, it's not normally just taken over to be used to receive payments on behalf of somebody else. It's used to funnel money or something like that, right? Some other schemes going on. So, and that's the traditional breakdown from my experience. While Russell and I work together, he's seen it all the way through, I think, from every facet.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say is that as time's gone on, not only has the QCs and the experience grown on our team, the investigations themselves have become more mature as far as how we do them and what we're looking for. It's the program has really developed into, honestly, like if you were to see some of the stuff we're doing, you'd be surprised how different it looks. It's way more in depth with more information, way better training. They're doing a really good job about essentially detecting and deterring crime any way they can. It's the compliance program has definitely matured, definitely.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Got to protect their users and users and everything like that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll move on to the third question here. Do you have any interesting investigations, or maybe something that came up from a scenario alert that you'd like to talk about in more detail with us?
Yeah, I mean, the ones that are very strange to me are kind of the Bitcoin cases and what people are doing with the dark web, with essentially trying to obscure their funds that they receive illegitimately into Bitcoin, and then they're routing them to these various websites that have been identified as the government, and even placed under sanctions through OFAC, and they are essentially trying to intermingle these funds to try to obscure the destination and the origin of these funds. And I'm kind of like a mid-level Bitcoin investigator, so I'm sure there's people that are way more experienced than me, but I just find it kind of crazy how like kind of like we're at the tip of the iceberg for like the potential for Bitcoin, and also the potential for crime for Bitcoin. Like we're honestly like kind of seeing what can be done with it. It's kind of crazy, actually. So yeah, like honestly, the Bitcoin scams where people are scaring people, funneling into Bitcoin, putting them into these mixing sites to try to obscure those funds, and then sending them to all these exchanges that aren't super heavily regulated. I mean, because like, I mean, you heard about what happened with Binance. Yeah,
Yeah.
that Binance scandal was pretty interesting. So yeah, I just that's one that's has me kind of thinking more than I probably should, as far as like what's going on right now with the Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's got a lot of hype between all the young users trying to invest in it, and then the older generation being skeptical, and I feel like some do buy into it also. So that is like one of the more interesting things that like I personally have been looking into.
Yeah. Now, so with these types of investigations regarding the Bitcoin, uh, your experience, it's they're purchasing Bitcoin directly from a service provider that you've worked for. Is that how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of these platforms do offer you to buy Bitcoin directly through them. So, and they've streamlined the process. They made it really easy, pain-free to be able to convert your funds into Bitcoin. And for the most part, most people are using it exactly how they should be. There's just a select few that are not. And those investigations tend to be a lot more complicated and lengthy, and obviously way more technical also.
Yeah. So that is, do you know, or has any investigations led you? So like were they using fraudulently obtained funds, or do you think this is part of a larger scheme? Like maybe, literally money laundering using, sales proceeds from drugs or weapons or anything
Yeah,
illicit
all
like
the
that.
above. Yeah, any way that they can legitimately get funds. It seems to be the preferred method for trying to launder any illicit funds. At least that's the kind of trend that I've been seeing recently. Now, obviously, there's all kinds of other ways that they can do it, but that is an emerging trend that's becoming more and more popular as time goes on, especially as the economy is kind of getting rougher. I notice a lot more people investing into Bitcoin, and that's kind of driving some like other factors. Like more people are more willing to buy into Bitcoin, and so the people that are already like kind of misusing Bitcoin, it's kind of seeing like an increase in traffic.
Yeah, it's appearing more legitimate. So
Yeah,
maybe those skeptical criminals are, for whatever reason they were skeptical about Bitcoin, but maybe they're not so skeptical about it now.
that's a good point. Yeah, it seems a lot more legitimate. So people are looking at it as more like a legitimate currency to kind of conduct their illicit business in,
Yeah, yeah,
for lack of better
awesome.
terms.
I'm pro digital assets,
Yeah,
cryptocurrency, definitely more so the utility of them. I jokingly say that I'm not going to sell my home until I can sell it on the blockchain because I'm tired of paying a title and escrow service. Yeah, thanks. I'll take my monthly fee back for you guys to keep record of me owning my own home. Uh,
yeah,
so so that's what I jokingly say, but I'm a firm believer in it. The technology is there. Um, I think it's slowly getting weeded out all the unnecessary use cases for it. I mean,
sure.
it wasn't around for investments, but it's being formed that way. But at least there's being risk controls placed to make sure that it's not being defrauded while you're investing in something, right? There's no rug pulls occurring as often. We're not talking initial coin offerings where you just create a token and you say you're going to airdrop hundreds of thousands of tokens, and and you're going to be a millionaire in a week. But
Oh yeah, all the
but you're
scams.
purchasing these tokens, these newly minted tokens that have no value whatsoever, and it's built on some shady propaganda. And they're like, yeah, send us your Bitcoin, which is worth $65,000 and counting today. So you send one Bitcoin over for this make believe token that ideally is hopefully gain some intrinsic value over the next couple of
Yeah,
months so you can turn a nice profit on it. But it's so easy to be deceived and coerced into thinking get rich quick schemes are simple that way. But I think we're eliminating a lot of those uh, opportunities, and it's becoming, like you said, more realized and legit.
yeah. Well, like one of the biggest things that blew me away when I started, doing Bitcoin investigations was, the essentially the rumor on the street is, even though it's a blockchain, it's hard to track or trace Bitcoin. The transactions can be anonymous, and through software that's been developed to trace the blockchain, those funds are pretty easy to track. I mean, I would argue that sometimes they could be even easier than a wire transfer. And with that being said, the low to mid-level criminals are, I guess, incriminating themselves even more, because you're seeing the entry point and the exit point. So like that's something that was not something that I thought would be capable. Like I believed what I heard on the street, that Bitcoin was pretty hard to trace, and that's just not the case at all.
Yeah, pseudonymous. It's just because it's not a name or a date of birth attached to it. It's an alphanumeric, lengthy thing. But from your perspective, you actually have pretty good attribution, as you mentioned, because you get to see both sides of it. You get to see the purchase of the digital asset, and then you get to see the movement of the digital asset, because it's isolated to a Bitcoin wallet that's associated to your user's account. And then if that digital asset does come back into that user's account, back into fiat, then you can see the entire cycle there. So I think that's a great way to put controls around it. Obviously, if they just use that account solely for the purchase of Bitcoin, and then the Bitcoin is eventually, purchasing weapons of mass destruction or something, there's nothing you can do about that, because it's long gone. It's on the dark net. But at least you can point somebody who maybe has more authority in the right direction, like, hey, this user and this wallet address are associated to this purchase of Bitcoin that eventually was used to buy fraudulent identity information from one of the hundreds of dark web.
Well, like the software that we use, it gives us like a weekly update, and every time I look at it, all these sites that I see people are doing sketchy transactions or transfers to, the government is putting them onto sanctions lists. It's very quickly, actually. I'm pretty shocked.
I think they've made it a pretty proactive approach this past year and a half of identifying these illicit, individuals, and also the service providers that are providing those illicit type things. I mean, the newest one was the Samurai Mixer, right? That one just came down. The two founders of that just got hit with DOJ charges like on Thursday or Wednesday last week.
Well, harping back to us all being veterans too, there's a lot of stuff that goes on the OFAC list through geopolitics and war. So I've been seeing like all kinds of stuff pop up for anything that has to do with China and Ukraine. There was a bunch of stuff that was being added through like the conflict in Gaza. I was like pretty shocked how fast they made that happen.
Yep. Lauren?
I think that's pretty neat. I mean, I've only like dipped my toes in the attempt to follow like a blockchain Bitcoin thing. Because I don't focus on crypto in my role. But it did seem it was really interesting how you could really watch the entire flow. So I get something that's easier for like illegitimate funds, that it's simpler than trying to bulk smuggle cash and deposit tons of cash. But it's neat to know that the flow is being detected the way it is, that DOJ and whatnot are able to put these people on like a sanctions list, where with cash, they can essentially put lots of cash into the system, and until it's hit a certain threshold and been reviewed for a certain amount of time, there's really nothing like you can do about it. So it's kind of neat to know, because I think it used to be like, oh, crypto is just kind of invisible. So interesting.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that one. Absolutely.
All right, awesome. Right on. We'll go ahead and move on here to question 4. This question is in regard to any of your experience. What is an issue or an obstacle that has kind of impacted you, your team, your institution the most in regard to your ability to, do your job, complete a task, or maybe just even do your job even better, more efficient, more effective. That it's red tape, precaution things that maybe are holding you back. But in that regard, is there anything out there that you think is more prevalent?
Well, I think one of the problems that I'm sure we could all probably agree across the board is that the amount of alerts or potential amount of incidents are very high and the compliance teams are very limited. So you got like the heavy workflow, you have the trouble getting to everything when things are supposed to be due for all the regulation dates. So that does kind of put a strain on us as analysts or any level of that role to do our best to put out really high quality reports, but also get through all of them. So that's pretty difficult. And you used to work where I work, you saw essentially how quickly, if you don't work, about pretty easily. And
Yeah.
then another thing too, which is probably not as obvious to someone who doesn't work on more of like a fintech platform, is I think because it's still relatively new compared to most other institutions and methods of transferring funds, that regulations do change and can be interpreted in different ways at different times by different people, right? So the compliance officers are always trying to keep up with everything that FinCEN puts out, or any type of information that comes down. So you have to be really quick to react and be really, in my opinion, really flexible because of the rules and guidance and procedures changing so fast. You have to be really nimble to adapt to those changes. And I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't feel like that you see that as much at a traditional bank.
Lauren, you got any comments?
I mean, yeah, I think just talking to people in the career field always say that the like amount of alerts and just the workload is extremely high, and trying to like do your best due diligence of each alert and case can be tough sometimes. So I can imagine in the fintech world, I haven't been in it, but it just sounds like there'd be a lot.
Yeah.
Well,
So, go ahead, Russell.
Oh, I was just going to make a like quick little side comment. And the other thing too that kind of makes me wonder, just like a logic kind of test I thought about the other day. I mean, in reality, compliance departments don't really make money for banks or institutions.
We've had that discussion.
Yeah, we're a necessary cost. So like I feel like just logically, like, would you want to spend the most amount possible on a team that isn't producing like really tangible funds for your company? Now, obviously, a good compliance team would stop you from getting fined, as we've seen, which could be pretty costly, which then you could say we are making money for our institutions. But I do understand that we're not like a revenue producing team on the institution. So I just was thinking about that.
Yeah, we're cost centers. We're known as cost centers. Traditional finance people know that most definitely, because banks are for profit. Believe it or not, believe it or not, they don't just store your money for no good reason. Otherwise they just tell you to put it in your pillow. But yeah, so compliance, financial crimes compliance departments are cost centers. Exactly, you hit the nail right on the head there. I'm curious though. So it's known across the industry that these systematic generated alerts are traditionally almost dang near 100%, given on what data you take. Normally, it is normal and expected activity, but yet they're triggering because of some sort of thresholds that's been met, or changes of account information, potentially, depending on how the structure of these are created, right? So is there any way that you think would be a more efficient or more effective way, or maybe something that you've seen actually that like could more effectively do it? Is there just like a generic kind of script where you just disposition something knowing that it's normal and expected, or what's the criteria for those alert triaging? Because ours, in my experience, ours has varied. Sometimes it's like, depending on which week you ask, or maybe quality control is poking around about something specific. They'll like focus more on that intensively. Is there some prompts, or what is it called, Lauren? What's the taboo word we don't use?
Oh, um, oh my gosh, I just forgot.
Templates. We don't use
Template. There we
templates.
go, template.
Now, some might say that's a more efficient and effective way, because knowing that most of these alerts, almost all of them, are normal and expected activity, then what are we doing spending so much time writing out this 1-2 paragraph narrative, relisting everything that's already disclosed in that alert?
Yeah. That's tough, because specifically like where I work, sometimes the typologies from case to case, whether it's a SAR or a no SAR, so we're saying it's not suspicious, they can look exactly the same. And honestly, I think that a template would be a great idea, to use templates for that. And then obviously sometimes you get those weird cases where everything is strange, everything is unique, and then you really have to custom tailor your narrative on the SAR or no SAR to explain, your investigation disposition, right? So like, I think templates are great. I think that just everyone needs to be okay with using them.
Does that include uh quality control? Like, from you, what are you looking at? Do you like it better when analysts use the same format each time, or are you like, man, I could see that they just copied last month's alert disposition and they forgot to scrub the account number from the previous one,
Yeah.
and that's why they're messed up?
Yeah, we'll see that. I mean, that's the problem with when you use templates, is you got to make sure that you update them correctly. But I feel like you save so much time using templates that really shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Managers out there, you listening? Hear it right here and there. Templates are a
especially,
good thing.
yeah, especially if the templates are written very well and uniformly dispersed throughout a team. I think they could be extremely effective. And I've seen them be really effective. I've used templates and they're great. It's just, you got to make sure that the template is like well thought out, well written, and I mean, just make sure it's executed. Just make sure you're being a good investigator, or honestly just a good person, and being thorough and checking your work before you submit it, right? So that's like super important. I will say though, on the quality control side of things, templates make it very easy to check to make sure that all the totals, all the dates, names, everything's all correct. So on a QC side, I think that templates are really nice. When the information is not uniformly displayed, it makes it very difficult, because then you got to go hunting, and we're not the original person that did the investigation, so it's even harder to find it sometimes. So yeah, I'm for templates. I like templates. I think we should use them more, especially when you have to do so many.
It's funny because at Lauren and I, right, we're colleagues, but in our experience, it's like taboo. Which understandably, it's kind of nice to have a unique approach, right? We don't want investigators to get complacent, right? Complacency is so
Yeah.
easy, but just like you said, it's just about being a good investigator, and taking. I always say, take pride in your work, but honestly, we have the 3 military veterans here, so maybe that's just instilled in us.
Sure.
But if I'm submitting something with my name on it, whether it was directed for me to do by a superior or just on my own, cognizance, I'm making sure it's the best thing that I possibly thought at that time, with that information available, that I'm right and everybody else is wrong if they disagree with me, is kind of how I submit my work. Like, I know I read this thing forwards, backwards, sideways, check the totals, check the percentages, count numbers, everything like that.
Yeah, and if you just think about it back to our military, all the military is templates and consistency, right? And especially when we're looking at all these reports and they're going off for someone else to look at, through FinCEN, I feel like consistency and getting things accurate would by far be the most important aspect of that personally, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at any successful business or anything to do with reports, like police reports, they're all the same. The information might be different, but they all follow a department SOP when they're writing up their reports. So I don't know. It seems like templates work pretty well in the wild.
I
That's
agree. I
yeah.
know some of the reports I had to work on, like mission reports and whatnot,
Yep.
are very
Yep.
similar. They're all the same. Like the only thing that's going to be different is going to be some of the narrative. But I mean, the flow of it is all the same.
Yep.
So it's easy to see what's missed, which I think is great. And I think it gives you more time in your day to focus on like the actual investigations that you need to
Yeah.
be working on. If you
Yeah.
see check fraud 10 times, most of them are going to be very similar.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, if you think about it, if you had infinite time, you could make the greatest report ever for every single alert, right?
Yeah.
But that's the reality is we don't have unlimited time. You have a set amount of time. So you got to make sure that you can pack as much information so that we can get a high closure rate, right? And accuracy. So just another reason to have templates.
All right.
I like the consistency, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't use a template. I've never really used a template, but I just go off my what I like, and I like the same thing over and over again. So I just rewrite it the same way every time. It's the same. It's the same intro. It's the same middle. It's the same end.
Yeah.
But like I don't per se have like a document that says insert here, insert here, insert here. But I know working previously, right? You and I together, when I transitioned, and there was that generator, right, that generated some of the dispositions or narratives, or
Yeah.
and it was like let's eliminate any potential error by our investigator by leaving these two sentences here for our investigator to leave their their remarks, and
Yeah.
everything else was populated based off of the transactions added, the date
Yeah.
ranges added, things like that. So it was funny. So when I transitioned, and it was like, oh no, no narratives, no, no templates, it's like we want you to write it just like you wrote it for the first time every time. So it was a little
Yeah.
bit of a shock, but it was funny.
I will say though that like what you mentioned there, I think that takes a lot of the human error out of the investigation, and it really once again creates consistency. But I mean, I could totally understand why they wouldn't want you to do something like that. But I mean, time is finite, so
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. How many bad people can you catch in your 8-hour workday when
Yeah.
when you just got handed 10 cases or something like
Yeah,
that?
exactly. That's always the balance, right?
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Any last remarks, Lauren?
No, I just think I agree with all of that. That's
Perfect. Well, then you can go ahead and move on to question 5.
Okay, so how can you describe briefly how you got into the financial crimes compliance career field, and what tips would you recommend for those who are looking to get into the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm probably gonna give you like one of the most one-off scenarios of how I got into this field. So I went into the Army. I was trying to pick an MOS that I thought would translate to a good job outside when I left the Army. And when you go into a recruiter's office, they give you thousands of choices for jobs, honestly. And my two choices were intelligence analyst or human interrogator. Those were the two choices that I was debating on. And I thought the human interrogator sounded awesome. I was convinced through my Army recruiter to go to as an all source intelligence analyst because you get a higher security clearance by going that route. So I said, this guy probably knows what he's talking about. I'm going to go
Yeah.
that route, right? And we all find out later that they have quotas and they manipulate you any way they want to get whatever numbers and bonuses they need, right?
He was a Humvee wheel mechanic.
Oh, he was the greatest used car salesman I've ever met. I mean, that guy, he got me good, not gonna lie. But And then everything ends up working out, right? So I had all that experience in the Army using everything I learned in the Intelligence Academy through the Army and my day-to-day life in the Army using, well, I mean, obviously when you're not deployed, you have different jobs. So I did a lot of security clearance and background checks. So that's where I learned about templates and report writing and government reports. And when I got out, I obviously went back to school. And I had really thought I wanted to be a police officer when I got out of the military. Well, politics changed, things got pretty dangerous, kind of thought about going a different route. And then I've always been really interested in actually catching the bad guy. And I realized watching a whole bunch of great movies that most bad guys are caught through their money. You know, that's what actually gets most bad guys put away, right? So I thought I might pursue the financial career. So I started applying to AML style jobs, and I got picked up by my contract company and got trained up quickly and was thrown into alerts and SARS right away. And it's been history since then.
I have a similar background. That's the same basically route I went.
Yeah.
Air Force, Intel, and then I I did some government contracting, and
Nice.
then I got into the financial industry, but
Okay.
very similar
So
route.
maybe my situation is not that unique, but yeah.
Just on this call, you just talked to the old vets.
Yeah.
The
Well,
only
I
difference,
mean, it feels so unique because I think in Intel school and in knowing all the Intel people that you probably worked with, everyone's thinking of just going to work for a government agency once they get
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Because even when I went and contracted for the government, I had some coworkers in that office who ended up at my financial institution and were like, come to the bank. And I was like, I could not work there. I have no banking experience.
Right.
So I just think it kind of, if you're not thinking that way, you're not going to even look in that area. Like you just are
Yeah.
so comfortable with the government. So
I never thought about this career field. I never even knew this
I never knew it.
basically
Yeah.
existed, right? And then you just kind of start looking and you realize, oh no, there's an entire field just for this. And you know, I have this internal debate when I think about it. And I mean, essentially, like I wonder if it was the right choice to go essentially the banking route, or if I should have went government. But then I realized we get a lot more freedom to do what we can to try to make a difference financially, like, you know, try to deter crime and stuff like that.
yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, the only difference between I don't know, probably most of us is that us three, I should say, is that uh, unlike you, Russell, I didn't get duped because I just went into the recruiter's office and I was like, look, I don't need you to sell me on anything, man. I just want to go shoot guns, put me in the infantry.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
You know, contrary to you, I wasn't really thinking about my future. I
Yeah.
just thought it was cool. And I enjoyed every minute of it, you know.
Yeah.
But at least I didn't have to be bamboozled by my recruiter, so I knew what I was getting myself into. Well, at least I thought knew what I was getting myself into. There were still some surprises, but it all worked out for the better.
The other thing that I think about that I've had this debate with coworkers and people in similar fields that aren't necessarily financial, but it we've all wondered, do great analysts, are they taught to be analysts, or are they born analysts? As far as like, there are certain people that are naturally good at being an investigator versus some people that definitely have to work harder than others. And the reason why I was mentioning that is I feel like a lot of these people who are great naturally at investigations find their way into the investigation fields.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Um, more gifted, maybe just have a
Yeah.
better sense of I don't, I don't know. So it's just more keen to unusual things, right?
Yeah,
Is
like pattern recognition and stuff. Because
Yep.
like, you know,
Yeah.
when we were in the Army intelligence school, which correct me if I'm wrong, I think Air Force trains at the Army school also, right?
No, the Air Force is in San Angelo, Texas.
Okay. So we had the Marines and the Navy with us, but I guess you're right. I guess I didn't see Air Force. I would have known that, right? It's been a while, but I feel like most of the people that I went to the intelligence academy with that got out of the Army are in completely opposite fields that have nothing to do with investigations. So like that's kind of why I mentioned that, is like, you know, it's not for everyone either. Like it's a
Yeah.
special kind of person that wants to do this.
Yeah, I'm closer to the perfectionist side of things, so I spend a
Yeah.
lot of time digging into things.
Yeah.
And I mean, my significant other, she says, I don't know how you do that. I was like, yeah, my brain hurts at the end of the day because I'm like,
Yeah.
digging so deep every single day, right? Like I
Yeah.
never knew what mental exhaustion was until you got into this field, and then you had a disposition 15 alerts, and then you came across some unusual or notable activity somewhere in the middle of there. And like once I start something, I can't stop. Like
Yeah.
I'm not good at taking a break and going on to something else. Like I want to know how it ends right then and there. Netflix included. So I binge a lot of series, but that includes my work too. I'm just not very good at stopping midway or whatever, because I feel like I lose all my mojo.
I know I would have never guessed at the end of the day, the mental exhaustion feels like physical exhaustion. Like some days I feel like I built like an entire building just doing investigations. Like I just want to go to bed when I get off, eat food, go right to bed.
Yep.
Brain's done. I'm not capable of functioning after that.
Yeah.
That's not something that I thought about when I entered this field.
I think this field, the one thing about the financial industry and the workload that we've already discussed is I do think it's hard sometimes to not rabbit hole
Yeah.
and want to just know everything, because I
Yeah.
know you've probably experienced the same thing. Like in the Intel world, it's interesting because every day you're learning something new essentially,
Yeah.
but you're just kind of nonstop reading, so you're going to understand the whole history of a country. So when
Yeah.
you move into this field, you want to understand the whole history of this person. And it's kind of, there's definitely times where it's hard to stop. It's like, well, I want to know their sister and I want to know everything so I can fully explain this. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's something that me and Skylar fell into when we were fresh analysts, was going down that rabbit hole. We didn't even know we were going down the rabbit hole. That's how new we were.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then
Yeah.
you
Just
find out,
wing
you're
each
like,
other.
wow. Yeah, you start learning what the actual relevant information is. And once you figure that out, I think is when the investigations get really easy.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. You touched on how you got in the industry a little bit. Do you know about what would you recommend outside of going Army intelligence?
I was going to say,
Uh,
join the army.
yeah, yeah. Hey, I'm
Oh,
all for it.
oof.
But how do you think, or maybe people you've talked to in the industry, like how have they gotten into the financial crimes compliance industry?
I mean, the people that I work with, I talk to them because, I just like to talk to people and kind of see what they're about. And I mean, people enter this field from all walks of life, different disciplines of education. And that's why I kind of like was thinking about, and I'm sure everyone has thought about this too, like maybe like some people are just more born to be naturally good at investigations, because there's people from completely unrelated college majors that end up in this field and are very successful. And I would say that like if you wanted to get into this job field, I would say that any type of accounting, any type of financial or math background, um, any type of investigation background, military service is always cool. Just make sure you read everything before you sign it, guys and girls. Um, that's tough because I mean, I feel like the entry level, you could kind of get away with really anything, but then as you go to the upper tiers, you really have to be more focused on your certificates and kind of what you want to do for your education. I don't know, maybe you can help me out on that one.
Awesome. No,
Yeah,
I'm still navigating the space too. I'm
yeah,
still level analyst. I take great pride in everything I do, and I have intentions. But there's the certifications. Obviously,
yeah.
uh, I've got a handful, but I can honestly tell you, I mean, it hasn't gotten me many more opportunities. But hey,
Yeah.
maybe down the line, right?
Not yet.
Not yet, not yet. But
Well,
Army, Army, of course, because it helps you get your education. From education, you can move on. But networking, I think Lauren and I talk about that all the time.
Yeah,
Networking,
network is good.
it's definitely more so who you know, because it's a competitive field.
Yeah,
People within financial institutions try to get into it, right? If they come from the
yeah,
operations side of things or the sales side of things, they're like,
yeah,
I'm tired of dealing with customers. What do you guys do? But they're unable to make the transition if they don't know anybody within that department. And
yeah,
it's kind of funny because it's contradicting to people from the outside trying to get in, because they're like, well, you don't have banking experience, and then people within the bank that aren't in that field are being told, well, well, you don't have investigations experience. So that's why I think it comes down to who you know. You just got to have somebody that's willing to vouch for you and give you that opportunity to have that interview, and from
yeah,
there, ideally, you can make a good connection with that hiring manager. And even if that initial interview doesn't lead to anything, you never know, right? You touch back with them, whatever connections you made, and they may know something that opened up, and they can put in a word for you somewhere else.
absolutely. And I mean, you're the one who got me sent on the track, because I was considering doing ACAMS or the CFE certificate, and you absolutely nudged me towards CFE. And I'm really glad that you helped me make that decision. I think the CFE is a really good certificate. It's just a little bit more broad and general, that kind of opens up a lot more doorways, and I think just ACAMS would allow.
Yeah.
And I think ACAMS is great to do too, but I would probably knock out the broad one and then go to the focused one, unless you only want to do AML for the rest of your career.
Yep. Lauren, last thoughts, tips, tricks.
No, I agree with the networking though. Like, I think it's great to know people in
Yeah,
kind of like what Skylar's really good at, finding people on LinkedIn, making friends, because
yeah,
in the long run, you can apply somewhere, but unless like they really understand like your worth, your relevance, your
yeah,
just how any of that could help them.
yeah.
So
It's hard to judge people off of a resume. I mean, I've seen resumes that look
yeah.
incredible, and then people or interview them, and you're like, I think we might want to, keep looking for other candidates. I've seen, other resumes that looked okay, and you meet the candidate, like, this is exactly the person I want to hire.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame that AI is being used to determine who gets interviews. And I think that's something that companies looking for quality employees should really start thinking about.
Yep. Yep. I think, yeah.
You
I
definitely
think
can't be humble on your resumes these days. Like
Or LinkedIn,
I
huh?
don't, I think we've been seeing too much bragging. I think it just in my recent experience, I think I've witnessed a whole lot of bragging on some of these resumes, and these applicants think you
Yeah,
hear incredible things about them, and then you turns out, yeah, they're just like you.
yeah. I feel like a lot of that too, the minute you read a resume, you can kind of see through that. But I totally understand what you're saying. And I think that that's created quite a bit of a like resume inflation with like the other jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully this naturally fixes itself, I hope.
Yep. Yep. All
yeah.
right. Sweet. Let me get this back up here real quick. Well, appreciate you, Russell, taking the time answering these questions. Hopefully it didn't make you sweat too much or anything. This is meant to be fun,
Yeah.
eye-opening, provide some insight. Ideally, somebody watches this and says, Russell is awesome, and I want to hire this guy. Or
That'd
Lauren,
be
you're
great. Yeah.
incredible. I want to hire this guy. I need him right
Network
now.
with us. We want to be friends with all of you.
Yep,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we all have a LinkedIn, of course. We're professionals here. You can give us a click, send a message to myself, Lauren, or Russell. Look forward to connecting with more of you. And if you are a financial crimes compliance professional and would like to be spotlighted on FinCrime Insiders, please reach out to us at our email, which will be listed in the description of this video. Otherwise, it's fincrimeinsiders@gmail.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment to our channel on YouTube, or otherwise you can visit us on our website at fincrimeinsiders.com, which then will reroute you back to our YouTube for up-to-date videos and information. I appreciate you for tuning in. This is the conclusion of episode 2, FinCrime Insiders.